Dad liked, and I heard at home. But I've always been very fond of what people like to refer to as classical music. It's just a name. It's longer form concert music.
Is there another name that you would suggest for that?
Well,
for you, it's broad. It's a broad field. You should not just.
It's a very broad field.
Right.
And I mean, there's concert music, orchestral music, symphonic music, and then there's chamber music, smaller.
Right.
And then there's jazz, and then there are some pop kinds of music that I enjoy. Always did. That was the first music I heard was the pop music of the 40s and early 50s.
Right. Okay. That's really fun to hear all that you said about music. I really enjoyed that. And you're this encyclopedia of music, and anybody who comes in touch with you and wants to know about music, they will only learn. That there's no other way to be affected by you when it comes to music. So we're going back to the question about big events in your life and how you grew, evolved, and as you said, life is all about love, and and discovering love in different fields and different people, and a different
love of different things.
Different things. Yeah. I'm gonna go get a bit personal here. So, your love for your parents is amazing, and I think it was quite a big event in your life, wasn't it, when you lost Grandma?
Oh, sure.
My grandma, your mother.
All of my
and of course your own
ancestors that I knew.
Right.
My grandmother, also. Yeah, well, I mean, that's I'm not alone in that. That's a huge impact, but you discover over time that you heal, usually, that you reflect on what it was that you shared with them and remember it, and it gives you joy. You recognize the fact that we all have lives that are limited in scope and length. They've just preceded you in all those processes, that you will follow them. And
what do you remember? I know it's a very frivolous question, but if I had to ask you, what do you remember Grandma, your mother, most for?
Oh heavens, I don't know if I could. I think her sense of humor, and her, as life went on, she became ever more developed as a spiritual person, and a person who gave great love to all people that she came into contact with.
Yeah.
I first knew her when she was very young, and watched her develop over time. And she became the scope of her thinking deepened.
Right.
And she became much more tolerant as she grew older, as many people do.
So, talking about Grandma's spirituality, she grew, as you said, she developed more in her spiritual, ideas and thoughts. What about your spiritual journey? How do you place it? And of course, did Grandma's spiritual journey affect yours? And do you see a difference in your spiritual and religious thought processes?
Oh, well, you mean as time goes on, or between me and my mother?
As time passed by, and both you and your mother too. I'm trying to put two questions in one here.
Yeah. Well, we didn't see eye to eye about a lot of things.
Okay.
Because around the time I was, I think in my late teens, mid to late teens, I began to develop my own, in my own way, and it was quite a struggle.
Right.
And so we didn't see eye to eye, and then she worried a lot about me for a long time. Eventually, she accepted certain things. And,
right.
I think in some instances I might have listened to her better than I did. But
then you were on your own spiritual path.
But it was good for me in a sense to find out for myself whether something was going to turn out to be meaningful or, I mean, some so-called spiritual associations can be quite toxic too, you know, because of the demands. They can be based on very flawed premises.
Are you talking about spiritualism in regard to religions, Abrahamic religions, or because there is a complete different school of thought about spiritualism where it's energy based?
Well, yeah, you're getting into a field where I'm still trying to discover for my, you know,
right.
Shall we say it's using the word nascent, which means it's still undergoing birth, shall we say.
Yeah.
You know, I started out, my spiritual life started out totally enveloped in a particular religious context, which was largely Abrahamic, and then gradually I broke away from that as I discovered beliefs and people who had other opinions, followed other ways, and a lot of it seemed quite reasonable to me.
Right.
And you know, and that process is still going. I hope.
Interesting.
I mean, you know, we're never there.
Right.
And
so what are your? May I interrupt and say? I mean, I've been interrupting a lot. Pardon me for that, but. May I ask you, what are your spiritual beliefs now? So, I mean non-religious, in a non-religious manner, because I know you're not religious, and I mean, you know, spiritual in the sense, the spirit, the energy, the you know, the philosophy, and the...
I guess if I were, you know, I mean, there is a certain dogma to my beliefs, but the dogma basically says, be open to things.
Right.
That these long lists of thou shalt and thou shalt not are really not that valid, but you know, as a whole collection, there may be truths behind them, and discovering those truths,
right,
you're responsible for, and sometimes you just have to make mistakes.
I like that you say you're responsible for discovering those truths, and you have to make mistakes.
Well, and the scope of them and what they mean.
Right, right.
So I think there's a lot of truth within a lot of dogmas, but don't feel like you have to believe in some dogma as universal.
Right, right.
You know, there may be very powerful truths or energies behind certain statements, behind certain dogmas, but look for the truth behind it rather than
blindly
saying that being blind. Yeah, exactly. And feeling guilty because, you know, for you that doesn't work.
Oh, that's nice. Well put together. So you've traveled a lot. You've been quite a world citizen, really. You've traveled.
Well, I've been to a number of places by now.
Yeah. Can you tell us, you know, about, you know, when I say us, I mean myself and people who will be watching this, and my family in India and friends around the world, and, you know, family around the world, because a lot of them are very curious to know who my dad is, you know. Well, my first family in India knows you very well, but there are others. Right. So how has travel helped, has it shaped you? Which are the places that you enjoyed most, and what learnings did you get from those places? And, you know, is there an advice for young people when they travel, or any age group as to...
Well, I guess my advice, first of all, is travel when you can, and having traveled, look around for the riches that any given environment can bestow upon you. So we put in and understand that a lot of it is, some of it will be quite ephemeral. You don't have to automatically like everything that you come, but, you know, it's like learning to eat certain dishes or look at a certain painting. At first it may appear to be horrible or something that makes you uncomfortable, but if you're around it a while, you may begin to see truth or beauty in certain parts of it. So learn to look at smaller things,
when you travel.
Travel, yeah. I think it's a great opportunity. And, again, luck, as I like to put it, when preparation meets opportunity, so that means be ready. Preparation is sort of putting yourself in a frame where you can see and understand, imbibe something from a particular place, culture, and then think about what that might mean to you, or even what people who are in that arena or environment, which might be confusing, what they can give to you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll need to be courageous. Sometimes you'll need to be very diplomatic, very polite, and sometimes you'll have to overcome infatuations with things that won't particularly last.
Right.
Too.
I really like
all of that.
I really like when you say look at the little things when you travel, because we all, when we travel, we do the touristy thing and we look at the big things. But when I know what you mean when you say little things, as to understand the culture, the better, culture better, like how a family lives, what food they eat.
Sometimes it's in the little things that repay in the largest way.
Right.
But
it amazes me at this age when you travel, you keep yourself so open to learning.
Well, one time. I hope I do.
Yeah. That's lovely thoughts there. So my other question, I've been asking so many questions.
Don't know. We should have questions, a lot of questions, and we should question many things.
Why do you say that?
Well, that's how you become more wise.
But
anyway, I was just trying to be cute, actually.
And it's a process, isn't it, to keep growing wise?
Everything is a process.
Yeah.
But wisdom is one of the most important. And I think we should also guard against feeling that we're terribly wise, because the minute we think we're wise, we've lost our wisdom.
Right. Yeah. Is there an advice? I find you to be a very wise person. Is there an advice or some, any kind of blessings? When I mean blessings, I mean good thoughts or good energy that you want to share with, everybody, any age group. Is there something that you want to say?
Like in a maxim or an overall statement or something like
anything
that?
Like, your viewpoint, your wisdom that you want to share about anything that you feel very close to, or advice you want to give people how to, travel through this journey called life, anything
the first thing that comes into my head is the more you know you don't know.
So there is no advice, really.
Well, I don't know. I guess that's the advice: is be aware that everything is large and many processes converging, coming apart. Sometimes we are born with a love for something almost. Sometimes we discover things, and sometimes they are thrust upon us.
Oh, yeah.
You see? That's a paralleling what someone says in a Shakespeare play.
Right. We've talked about favorites, favorite composers and conductors, and favorite foods, and things about photography and art. Which is, when you've traveled a lot, and which are your favorite cities in the world? And is there a favorite kind of architecture of a particular culture that you enjoy most, and when you traveled, you enjoyed that a lot?
Well, we'll start with cities. You know, I love San Francisco and New York and Amsterdam and London and Vienna, Zurich, and Jaipur, among many others.
What is the city you said before Jaipur? Sorry?
Zurich, that's a city in Switzerland.
Oh, you mean Zurich?
Well, yeah, they call it Zurich.
Oh, well, that's great, because I totally forgot to ask you about your love for languages.
Oh.
You know, I'm so glad I asked you that question.
Well, that's funny.
You know, I would love for everybody to know that you have this great flair for languages, and you can speak a few.
Making fun of language. I'm actually far from being a linguist. The only language that I can do anything with is English, and that comes through painstaking work.
But you are very fond of French, aren't you?
Well, I love the sound of French. I don't speak it. I know a few phrases. I often use French expressions, but only around people who are not French. You know, as soon as I get in the presence of somebody who can actually speak the language, I wouldn't butcher their language in front of them. I don't have a lot of confidence in foreign language. I liked French and studied it.
Right.
And I liked German and studied it.
Yeah.
But, you know...
I don't mean to say in regards to when you said you don't have any confidence. That was not my... when I said I meant... I understand that you're a very shy person. Not many people know this. And you could retrieve into a shell when you feel...
I certainly can. I can,
right.
As they say, climb up, which is like the shell goes...
Yeah.
You know.
But I think you're fabulous.
It usually opens up very slowly.
Yeah, but I think you're fabulous in French and in other language.
I'm not, but thank you for saying so. I wish I knew it better. I wouldn't mind, even at my own age, having an opportunity to live in France, and you know, for many reasons, but learning the language better.
So art and architecture, which ones are your favorite? I know you like Victorian architecture a lot.
Oh gosh, I like a lot. I think I like Gothic and I like Renaissance very much. Romanesque, Greek and Roman ancient architecture. I love Indian architecture.
Rajput. The Rajput architecture.
Well, I'm not sure, you know, I'm not sophisticated enough to be able to classify it. I just like it, you know. And even ancient things that I saw in my course.
Right.
You know.
Well, when you went to India, I'm coming back to India because we have India as a connection because of me. What did you? You know, I know how your reactions were when you first went to India, and the reason I ask you this is because there's a lot of depth and philosophy hidden what the person that you are and became after your visit to India. And I think I see a lot of respect for life, a lot more. You always had respect for life, but after you returned from India and the first time you went there, it seemed to me you took a lot of learnings from there.
Well, they seem to have a lot of respect for all forms of life in India, and one notices and you're touched by it, and then you begin to think about it.
Right.
You know.
Would you say India changed you a little bit as well as a person?
Well, I think so. I think, how could you go to India and not be changed? I mean, it's a force unto itself. India has so much to offer the world. You know, it's difficult. The scope of the country is very difficult to understand. I like to quote people because I'm hardly able to come up with original observations. I've been reading some of the writings of Ruth Jabwala, and she has some wonderful things, wonderful stories, but she always says that it always seems that one is more aware of God in India, God in a very broad sense.
Yeah, you mean the universe?
Maybe
yeah,
the universe, or only depends on. I mean, that's a whole interview in itself.
Right.
But anyway, in terms of spiritual intensity, in terms of what's known as, I'm trying to think of the word now that I usually use, but anyway, aware of this spiritual presence. One feels that very strongly in India. I had some very strong emotional, physical reactions to exposure to certain things there.
What would you say was your strongest things that strongly impacted you in India? I remember the Mother Goddess Temple, Mansa Devi.
Well, that's probably one place where I really felt. I guess you call it the numinous, which is aware of this great spiritual energy that affects you in a very strong way. And that was I've forgotten the name of the temple. You can remind me.
Mansa Devi. Mansa Devi, the goddess Mansa.
Mansa Devi.
Mansa Devi.
Mansa Devi.
Yeah, the goddess Mansa.
Mansa Devi.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hindi is a great challenge, speaking of languages.
So I'm going to end this interview soon, and towards the end of it, any important things you want to tell people, or you want to, I leave it open, no questions from my side.
What I said before, I don't know that I can add to it. Be aware, be open. Don't limit yourself and others. Find empathy with things.
Yeah.
Be aware that there are flawed premises.
Yeah. Right.
Some of these things can be very toxic. We all have allergies. What you're allergic to, someone else might not be. It might be good for them, or they might be highly resistant.
Right. So you're basically saying we need to learn to develop and practice inclusion.
I think practice inclusion,
yeah,
particularly with human beings. I think develop in discrimination. I mean, don't discriminate against someone or some entity, but for yourself, begin to seek out the important and meaningful things.
Right. So, because you're saying your examples about allergy, I know what you mean is people might be different. People might come from different genders.
People, food, temperaments.
Right. We just need to learn to...
Cultures, all those things.
We need to learn to accept and respect that.
I think we need to accept and respect them, and in some cases you go beyond respect or tolerance to embracing.
Right.
But you can't embrace everything. Not everything is worthy of being embraced, but you have to figure that out for yourself.
Do you look forward to the future? What are your hopes and aspirations?
I mean, I just feel to live and to live happily, we have to believe that there is a future and that we'll somehow muddle through, or that we'll be able to respond to crises if they occur,
Any regrets in life so far?
Oh, we always have regrets. I regret sometimes the way I handled dealing with uncomfortable social situations, things that I've said that were hurtful, that were certainly unnecessary, inability to be diplomatic when it really would have made a difficult situation better.
Okay. The most important things you're thankful for? This just before we end. in your life. Could you name a few things that you've been very grateful for?
Oh, grateful! I'm just thank goodness.
Yeah, it's my accent.
Well, I think all those in life whom I've loved, all the discoveries of the arts, which have been so meaningful to me, all of the discovery of the wealth of experiences in the world, in both man-made and natural.
Wonderful, well said. And your spouse?
Well, yes, right. Well, that's included in people that I love.
Yeah.
But he's the most important. I had to learn we had to learn to tolerate one another, but we certainly embrace each other a lot.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like to use. I don't think I made this up, but I like to use the analogy of two living plants, where the roots and the branches intermingle.
Right. Well, just before I end, I just want to say thank you a lot for this lovely, simply fantastic interview. We could just go on speaking for another 3 hours, you know that.
Well, it's interesting how once you get started, you can go on. Because I wondered, what on earth am I going to say?
There's so much to
You're
learn.
a good interviewer, that helps.
I'm not really. I could be more patient, but I have to keep the time factor in mind.
Well, you're good enough, and I think even beyond that. But
Right.
Anyway.
Right.
Even.
But thank you for your wisdom, your love, your compassion towards all living beings and cultures in the world. Thank you for who you are. I mean, I'm really blessed to have you in my life as a parent. Nature's blessings are really kind, and you're one of the blessings nature has.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine, actually.